For the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 7, Class 5. This is February 2nd, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do, please. Bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Understanding a little bit about karma and emptiness, we understand how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with your strong intention, turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please Please teach us that. And they're so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. For those of you who are in Mexico recently with us, I would like to share with you that we got the tamales and shared them with different people. So we did our whatever that is, right? We upheld our commitment, our baby commitment. So Joanna, would you please let the Telegram group know? Thank you. It was fun to do. Okie doke. So your quiz asked you, what are those first 9 root downfalls? And in the interest of time, I'm just going to say them. But be prepared that some future class, right, we may be asked to recite them. So I will avoid praising myself and criticizing others. I will avoid failing to give the Dharma or material things. I will avoid failing to accept an apology and or striking someone, right, out of anger. I will avoid giving up the greater way and teaching false Dharma. I will avoid stealing what belongs to the 3 jewels. I will avoid giving up the highest Dharma. I will avoid taking away an ordained person's robes and or causing them to lose their ordained vows. I will avoid any of the immediate misdeeds, and I will avoid holding wrong views. Then your quiz asked, what are the two parts of those first four root downfalls? And the first is, I will avoid praising myself and criticizing others. So praising self, criticizing others. And if you recall, it doesn't take both to break the vow. Either one will do the job in those specific circumstances with the four chains intact, which we haven't talked about the four chains in detail yet. Second, the two parts are failing to give the Dharma, failing to give material things in those specific circumstances. Right? We fail to give material things all the time, and that's not breaking the vow, right? It's blocking our abundance, but it's not breaking the vow. Then third one, not accepting an apology, and then staying angry to the point where you hurt somebody. I mean, literally hit them. And it says, or throw something at them. So you wonder what else it means, but you stay so angry that you hurt them or get somebody else to do it for you. And then the last one, giving up the greater way is one part, and teaching false dharma is the other part, meaning teaching something as dharma that you made up. Okay. As opposed to clearly identifying, this is my experience, this is how I think it, is an explanation is, but not calling that, and Buddha taught it that way. Okay, that's the main piece of that one. All right, so let's go on to the next 9 root vows, number 10 through 18. Number 10 is, right, so Linsong says sometimes it says and sometimes it says or, but for both, it doesn't require both to break the vow, either one. Whether it says and or, right? The meaning apparently is one or the other will break the vow within those given circumstances of each one. Plus the 4 chains, which again, we haven't done in detail. That's coming in next class. So number 10, I will avoid the root downfall of destroying towns and such. So the and such means like cities, counties, countries, whole areas. So if you start from like the smallest group place, call it a village, a city would be the next biggest. And in my country, then you go to counties, and then from county you go to state, and from state you go to the United States, and from there you would go to continent, right? And it just keeps getting bigger. And it's interesting because, I mean, we're destroying towns and such just by living, right? I mean, driving, we add to air pollution and we use up the roadway, and right. So again, this vow has specific conditions to actually break the vow. And Geshe-la pointed out that Bodhisattva vows and Diamond Way vows are designed for practices of busy people. Different really than the Pratimoksha vows. The individual freedom vows are designed for monastics, right? People that withdraw from the busyness of their life. Lay people can keep Pratimoksha vows as well, but they're just those 5, as we know. So in Buddha's time, the busiest people were those in charge of running the country and running the businesses, right? That ran the economy. of the country. So really the noble, the royalty and the aristocrats is who is like your target audience for the Bodhisattva vows and Diamond Way vows. The royalty in those days, they like owned everything, apparently. And so they were in charge of the rules by which it was all used and allocated. And so if you were one of them, you would be the one who's, ordering some kind of either supporting a place or leaving it alone or actually destroying a place to use it for something else, perhaps, right? All the way up to ordering the defense ministry, right, to do something. So really, we're talking about people who are in charge of making the orders about how other people behave in a village, a city, a town, a country, etc. And if those people are on their spiritual path and they take bodhisattva vows, then they have a vow to not make the order to destroy anybody's place within their own jurisdiction or outside of it. So technically, says the commentaries, in modern days, unless we are a king, right, or a ruler of a country, city, town, etc., we probably are not in the position to make the order destroy that place. So they say this is one of those vows that we really don't have the circumstances to actually break. Woohoo, right? So we could add it to our rejoiceables list, even if we aren't sure we kept any of our other vows. We kept this one because I'm just not in charge, right? So I can't break this one. But when we're talking about the concentric circle thing, we can look to see, to what extent am I damaging that area by my use of it, and etc. At our other house, we ended up having pack rat troubles, and we tried all kinds of different things, both karmically and worldly, to discourage the pack rat. But once they get into your car and under your house, and like they own it. And we realized that in our back alley, just outside our fence, we had this big, beautiful cactus, the prickly pear cactus that's their favorite. And, there's all this stuff that the pack rat gathers. One time we undid a pack rat midden and old when we found somebody's car keys. Like they take stuff and keep it. And we caught the poor pack rat. We agonized over it, but we decided we needed to catch it and move it, to someplace more suitable. And then we hired somebody to dig up the cactus, because otherwise new pack rat comes in. And, we did it very compassionately as we could, but we knew it was like we were destroying somebody's town, city, country, in order to protect what we called more valuable town, city, country, right? Our personal place and our neighbor's place, and etc. And it's not breaking the bodhisattva vow, but we did do 4 powers and fire puja and so forth, because, right, we were out here in the concentric circle thing of this particular vow, the willingness to destroy somebody's house, At least we moved them first, but we're not proud of it. These things happen. Chatson Kappa points out that for this vow, even if we were a person in charge, the motivation is that you really want to destroy those places. And you want to destroy those places because you're afflicted with your ignorant liking, your ignorant disliking, and your ignorance itself. So it takes this really huge mentally afflicted state of mind for someone who has bodhisattva vows to go and be in a situation where they would choose to, order something to happen that's going to destroy somebody's town and such. Right? Now, they point out that this vow does not include striking people that live in those places, although it's probably going to happen, because that's covered in root vow number 3. So the one who orders some kind of, fighting or war, if they've got bodhisattva vows, they break this one and they break the one of striking others out of anger, right? Assuming it's some kind of ignorant dislike. And it says the vow does not include destroying the property of the Sangha, although it probably will if there's any Sangha there, because that's covered in root downfall number 7. Do you see? So it may be that one gets a given vow gets broken, and within it, others get broken as well. That's number 10. I will avoid destroying towns and such. Number 11. I will avoid the root downfall of teaching emptiness to a person not yet mentally prepared. So again, this has very specific circumstances, plus the 4 chains, in order to fully break the vow. The words of the vow don't fully convey it, as none of them seem to do. So the point of this is that person A is the person who has bodhisattva vows, who's teaching emptiness to somebody. And person B is who they're teaching it to. In these circumstances, that person B must be reasonably new to these teachings about emptiness. So they really haven't studied it carefully yet. And then person A's description of emptiness is a high level, high enough that the person B listening might get scared, like higher than they could understand. And that this person B already has a certain amount of wishing bodhicitta, meaning they have this feeling in their heart that they would like to become a being who can help others get free from their suffering. Right? You can have that feeling really strongly without knowing much about emptiness. Right? It's that really, really strong compassion. Then, as a result of what they've heard you say, or person A say about emptiness, they actually get afraid. And because of that fear, they turn away from the Mahayana teachings and they take up the Hinayana teachings and practices. When person A becomes aware that person B quit the Mahayana is when person A's vows get broken. So, it brings up a lot of questions about how does that really work? Like, what if you teach somebody emptiness and you never hear from them again? And right, you don't directly know how your teaching influenced them, but they see themselves switch down, but you never learn. Have you broken your vow? I don't know the answer, right? They don't go into those specifics. It sure seems to me you would need to know. And then how would you know if you're teaching someone higher than they were ready to hear, right? When you're teaching, you would need to be watching their face, watching their response. Yeah, and change the subject if you need to. If it looks like they're flipping out, that I know when I hear teachings, I usually put on a poker face, you know. I'm not willing to let anybody see me going, yeah, wow. Like, I don't understand. I just go, mm. And then, right, how would the teacher know if they were teaching so I don't know the answer to these questions. Underlying all of it, of course, is our intention. Is in our intention of teaching somebody emptiness, something in us needing to show them that I know the highest. In which case you just blast forth the highest, any chance you get. And we've been taught to teach emptiness by way of the pen. And that is technically teaching the highest. But if you've listened to Geshe-la share that in different audiences, you see that he gives different emphases to after people agree, oh, the observer is bringing something to the party. Where he goes after that matches the audience as a general rule. But then, there could be a given person in the audience. You get where I'm going. If our intention in sharing is to help people understand, then the likelihood of our just showing how smart we are and going too high, too fast is less likely to happen, right? We'd be more sensitive to the feedback from the audience. So the commentary says, if you've checked the person and you really believe they're ready, and you give them this high explanation, higher than they are ready, but you really thought it was a good match, and then they think about it and they leave the Mahayana for the Hinayana, you don't break your vow, right? Because you tried your best to match them and it just didn't work. And if you teach emptiness to a non-Mahayanist and freak them out, it's a non-virtue, but you don't break the vow. Right? So it has to be very specifically somebody who's already got a Mahayana heart. And what we teach them about emptiness, they go, oh man, I don't think so. And they drop down. Okay. How do we know when we're teaching emptiness properly, or when we're hearing somebody else teach emptiness properly? Geshe-la says a good clue is that someone who understands emptiness well will always be speaking about virtue or merit or ethics, morality, karma, right? Within the same conversation as emptiness. emptiness in its own context is actually not helpful. It needs to be, right, colored with the connection to behavior choices. And it gives us a good clue that the person who's teaching emptiness knows at least something about it. If we do hear an improper teaching on emptiness by someone, we would want to help that person understand this connection between emptiness and morality better, not to show off what we know, not to put them down, but to help them be more effective in helping people because they're obviously trying to help people. You probably wouldn't want to do it in front of the audience if they have an audience. But if we are well trained in emptiness and dependent origination, our strength of understanding can help us in our motivation and efforts to help someone else understand better. It can be hard. So number 11, I will avoid teaching emptiness to a person who's not yet mentally prepared. Number 12, I will avoid causing a person to turn back from total enlightenment. Like, why in the world would we ever do something like that? It sounds like, gosh, that one must be impossible. However, Jason Kappa says this would happen if there's someone that is already has some level of bodhicitta, their wish to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So they're on a Mahayana path. And for who knows why, the Bodhisattva with vows says to them, you know, you'll never be able to carry out the 6 perfections and actually reach Buddhahood. If you strive instead for the goals of listeners and self-made Buddhas, then you'll manage to liberate yourself from the circle of suffering. Then, because of your words, your advice, they actually decide to turn away from the Mahayana and take up the Hinayana or some other path, perhaps. And that's when you break your vow. The downfall's complete when the person you said that to goes, oh, okay, and drops out of Mahayana. And, you know, you're essentially saying to the person, you're not capable of the highest path. Why don't you stay on the lesser path? And then they take your advice. Geshe-la said, of course, everyone's capable of the highest path just by applying the habit, right? Master Shantideva's famous lines, there's nothing we can't learn if we grow the habit of it. So he didn't mention the motivation behind this one, number 12. You know, it sure seems that there would be a certain amount of arrogance on one's own part. And then a certain amount of misunderstanding as well. You know, I suppose I could envision I don't know, someone, no, I can't even envision. Like why we would ever say to somebody, six perfections is going to be too hard for you. Number 13, I will avoid the root downfall of causing a person to give up the morality of freedom. So the morality of freedom in Sanskrit is pratimoksha. We call them individual freedom vows. We learned that there were those 8 types of freedom vows. And they're called individual freedom vows because if we, the individual, keep them well, we will get free. And if we don't, we won't. We can think too that individual freedom vows means it's an individual act, right? They are the deeds that I do that plant the seeds in my mind for the results that I want. I can't rely on anybody else's deeds. I can't blame anybody else's deeds for my behavior, right? It's a personal practice and personal results. We make our own goodness. We make our own harmfulness. Okay. So we break this vow when, because of something that we do or say to another, they give up their vowed morality. Tsongkhapa says, again, there are specific circumstances here, because that person would need to already have been keeping their pratimoksha vows. They would have to have had some. And they're keeping them properly. And then you would say to them, oh, what's the use of keeping those freedom vows? Come on up to the greater way. Develop your wish for enlightenment instead. And by getting bodhicitta, practicing the Mahayana, you'll be able to stop all your wrong deeds. You don't need those freedom vows, because you'll be practicing the higher way. And then when, because of what you said, that person does turn away from their personal freedom vows, your downfall is complete. And again, thank you, Geshe Michael, for training us so well. You know, I hear this and it's like, I can't imagine it actually happening, because we understand how those behaviors build upon each other, karmically speaking. But it must happen out of arrogance, out of misunderstanding. I don't know, seed shift and stuff happens. And we already have heard what Tsongkhapa has to say about this idea that once you have your higher vows, you don't need to bother with your individual freedom vows anymore. He said that idea is as dangerous as a fierce hailstorm on the tender spring corn crops. It destroys your happiness and the happiness of others. We should throw that idea out like trash. The higher vows are built upon the pratimoksha vows. They're just more subtle ways of keeping those basic 5 and helping us avoid the 10 non-virtues. So to say it would be right to give them up is totally wrong, right? Totally mistaken, either through our own ignorance or what's the word? Like, you would have to dislike that person so much. Like, they admire you and you dislike them and you want to cut them off. in the, in this really perverted way. 13, 14. I will avoid the root downfall of holding that a person cannot eliminate desire and the rest by following the way of the learner. The learner, it's a newish term for us. In the learner category is terms that are a little more familiar, the listener and the self-made Buddha. So learner is a catch-all for those two levels of practitioner. Listener, it's a long story what they actually mean by that. For now, let's say they're a practitioner whose main focus of study and practice is the four Arya truths, right? The truth of suffering, the truth of all that suffering has causes, the truth of the cessation of the suffering if you stop the causes, and the truth of how to do it, the path to stop the causes. Then self-made Buddhas who are not self-made and they are not Buddhas yet, they study and follow the 12 links of dependent origination. They appear to have a no direct teacher in that lifetime, but they have these great seeds from having studied and served teachers before, that they are getting teachings from other places and being able to gain realizations, right, with an out and apparent teacher. But they're focused mainly on those 12 links of what perpetuates the cycle in order to stop perpetuating their cycle of suffering, meaning their apparent goal is their personal nirvana. Learners, right, those two levels of practitioners are focused on reaching the end of their own suffering. So this downfall happens, excuse me, out of saying to someone at either of those levels, no matter how much you study and train in your tracks of practice, you won't ever be able to eliminate the mental afflictions in their entirety. The breaking the vow comes when that other person understands what you have said. Only when they understand. Other vows, they have to make some behavior choice change. This one, they only need to understand what you've said. They need to know about the Hinayana teachings and practices. And then they hear you say that those practices don't work to help you reach nirvana. It's not true that they don't work. They do work to take us to the end of our mental afflictions and seeds for more. We practice them too. The same things the learners practice, the Mahayanist practice as the steps shared with those of lesser capacity. So the person that hears you say that doesn't have to believe you. They just have to hear what you're saying, what you mean by that. And you break your vow. Those lower way teachings, called lower way teachings, they are teachings by the Buddha. They serve everybody. They take us along the way very purely, very beautifully. And the higher way understandings come out of the behavior choices that we make as we understand the lower way teachings better and better. So Geshe says it's just stupid to put them down, right? That seeds that break our own growing wisdom, to disrespect the lower way. He says to do so means that a person has not studied any of it very well, because otherwise we would know how valuable that they are. So then in your reading, it'll say there's a vow 14 and a half, between 14 and 15, that is not listed in our usual 18 root downfalls. And they come to the conclusion that it was left out in the Jetsongkhapa list of 1 through 18 because it's a repeat of number 1. This 14 and a half is avoiding praising self and criticizing others. Only it has a little different connotation from the first vow. I'm sorry, criticizing, right? So this vow 14 and a half, that's really part of vow number 1, has the same motivation, wanting material gain or wanting fame or admiration. But it has more specifics given to us. It says that the person with the bodhisattva vow that's in danger here is someone who is practicing the Mahayana, reciting, reading, teaching it, but motivated, themselves is motivated by getting material gain, getting praise or fame. And you say to your students or somebody else, I'm a practitioner of the greater way with no interest in material gain or fame. But that other teacher, they're sharing Mahayana too, but I know that they're doing it motivated by wanting to get more sponsorship, wanting to increase their reputation. So the downfall is complete when you've expressed this praise and then the criticism. So this one takes both. When you've expressed it and someone else has heard it, you break your vow because it's grounds for creating a schism, number 1, and it's a lie, right? You're saying you don't have motivation for gain and material fame, but you do. You're saying the other one does, and how would you know for sure? So saying it about the other person may or may not be a lie, but saying that you aren't teaching for gain and fame when you are, do you see the circumstance is more specific for this vow 14 and a half? But then Jodson Kappa points out that Master Shantideva in his text, he says, come on, this vow is subsumed in vow number 1. And that the common theme between the two of them is some level of jealousy, right? You wouldn't even bother to criticize somebody else if you weren't a little bit jealous of them, right? To point out that someone's teaching false teaching wrongly in order to help them, that's not criticism, right? That's helping. And hopefully we wouldn't do it in front of their audience. Criticism is this intentional pointing out something, true or not, about another person to other people. And the only reason we do that is so that we could influence how people think about them. Right? Jealousy or ill will would be going on underneath there. Okay. Number 15. I will avoid the root downfall of professing the complete opposite. Professing the complete opposite is code word for telling a lie about the profound. And telling a lie about the profound is code for saying or implying that you've seen emptiness directly when you haven't. So the circumstance that Jetsun Kappa points out is that you might be teaching emptiness to someone else. You have not seen it directly yet, but you say to that other one, now you meditate as I've taught you, and you'll come to see emptiness and become just like me. Right? So technically they haven't said outright they've seen emptiness directly, but the implication is I did, right? If you come to see emptiness directly and you become like me, it implies that I've done it too. So to say that implication, it's enough to break this vow. When the other person grasps your words, is what that commentary says. When they understand what you just said, you are telling a lie about your own attainments. Does the other person have to know that? Technically not. Right? You hear yourself saying that to someone. And when you are aware that they've heard you versus, what did you just say? Right? Excuse me, I wasn't listening. Right? They had to have to be aware that they heard you. Your mind breaks your own vow. Right? They don't have to say, you've never seen emptiness directly. What are you doing saying like that? Right. And if you have ordained vows, you also broke your ordained vows because you've lied about your spiritual attainments. Right? And then if we have 5 lifetime layperson's vows, we've also broken one of those. Okay. So don't even give the wrong impression. Number 16, I will avoid the root downfall of accepting what belongs to the 3 jewels when someone presents it to me. So this means something has been offered, given, dedicated to the use of a temple, a center, a sangha member, a monastery. And somebody takes that and gives it or offers it to you, and you accept it. So you would need to know, right, that it had been taken. And so it makes you wonder when somebody offers you something, if you should ask them, where'd this come from? And it's a little delicate. But again, there's more specific circumstances here. Jesun Kapa's commentary says, typically this vow getting broken would be in a circumstances such as when the officials of a particular area are exacting a punishment on an other area, and they take an object or money from one monastery, in the area that's being targeted, and then give that object or money to the monastery in their personal place. For the monastery to accept it, whoever's doing the accepting, if they have bodhisattva vows, it would behoove them to check to find out where that object or money came from before they accepted it or not. If that was happening on an individual basis, we would need to know that the object was stolen or forcibly acquired. That in this vow, it's not about us stealing it or even about arranging for it to be stolen. That was in a different vow. This is accepting it when it comes back. So if, for instance, we're the one who arranges for somebody to go take something from, wherever, and bring it back and give it to me, when I accept it, I have both broken the vow about stealing from the 3 jewels and the vow about accepting what's been stolen, because I got somebody to do it for me, right? Both vows get broken, but you can break one or the other, as you can see. If you're not the one arranging for the being stealing, you don't do what vow was that? Number 5, stealing what belongs to the 3 jewels. So this one is accepting what has been stolen. Okay, accepting stolen goods. Number 17, I will avoid the root downfall of rejecting the practice of quietude and giving possessions of meditators to those whose practice is recitation. Geshe-la says really this one means making unfair rules. And so the specific circumstance to break this vow is that you are the one in charge of the rules of behavior in a given monastery. So you're the abbot. And in your monastery, there's a group of people who mainly focus on their meditation practice. And there's a group of people who mainly focus on their learning, reciting, debating, mantra recitation, right? A more actively involved group versus the meditatively involved group, right? That are more withdrawn. And you, the abbot, feel like, well, all these that were actively doing their Dharma practice, they do more for the monastery, right? Their sponsors are impressed with them. Sponsors give more money when the practitioners do more mantra, I guess. And so your preference is for the support of that group over the support of the meditators who don't seem to do much. And as a result, the support that comes in for the meditators, you relocate and use it in support of the studiers, and making that designation between the two, and then actively taking the support from meditators and giving it to the other group is what would break your vow. Master Shanti Deva says, remember Mr. Three Thoughts? They thought Master Shanti Deva didn't do anything but eat, poop, and sleep, when in fact all he did was meditate, right? And write those extraordinary texts. He was doing more in his meditation than outside, but nobody could see it. And so there was this disrespect for him. We'll learn this story. So technically, this is one of those vows that unless we are in charge, of a group of people practicing and their support systems and their ownership of things, we really can't break this vow, because we're not in the position to say, hey, right, take those things that belong to the meditators and give them to the reciters. Thank goodness we're not in a position to do that. Again, the underlying mental affliction in the abbot is this judgment between the two, right? And a misunderstanding of the power of practice. And right, making this in a way, it's another form of schism, but it's pointing out our judgments and prejudices. And so for our onion skin theory thing, we're not ever going to get to the center and break this vow. But to what extent are our prejudices influencing our support of others, our fairness towards others? All right, let's take a break. We have just one big one to go. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, drum roll. Here's the root vow number 18. I will avoid giving up the wish for enlightenment. It comes specifically from the Sutra on Skillful Means. So Sutra on Skillful Means, direct words of a Buddha written down by somebody else, but one of the vows that came directly during his time as a bodhisattva vow. So it really does mean giving up our intention to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And the thing is, with this one, it only takes an instant for the vow to get broken. And it, in fact, breaks all of our vows, because in the next instant, you are no longer bodhisattva, right? What makes us bodhisattva is our wish to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And technically, what makes us bodhisattva on the first bhumi is having that wish in our heart when we actually experience emptiness directly and come out of it. And in the instant that we say, I changed my mind, I don't want to become a Buddha, I don't want to help all sentient beings, to hear ourselves, to be aware of ourselves having that thought, our 18th vow is broken and we are no longer bodhisattva. But it takes this full-on I quit attitude. It's not, I don't think I can do it. This is so hard. This is going to take so long. I'm not sure. How am I ever going to do it well? That's not breaking this. This is we try, and something happens. And we just go, never mind, right? And there's a famous story about, I'm not sure who, the one that ended up with one eye, Virupa, is that him? This great bodhisattva, and he's walking along one day, and somebody taps him on the shoulder. He turns and he looks, he sees this old hag. It's always an old hag somehow. I relate to that. And he sees the old hag. The old hag's a demon. And the demon is upset with his spiritual progress and wants to interfere. So the demon shows up as this old hag, and the old hag says, "Oh, you're Master Virupa, the great Bodhisattva, right?" And he goes, "Well, yeah." And she goes, I need your eyeball. And he goes, "Okay." And because he's a diamond way practitioner, he reaches in with his left hand and pulls out one eyeball, I don't know which one, and he very respectfully hands it to her. And she takes it and she goes, "Ew, you touched that with your left hand." She throws it on the ground and she stomps on it. And he thinks to himself, "Man, if people are going to be like that, I don't think I want to help them." And boom, he lost his bodhisattva vow. And then the rest of the story is he had instant regret, and then I haven't heard the rest of the story, but I'm going to guess that he ran and renewed his bodhisattva vows with somebody really fast. But the point is, you can see a situation like that. You do for somebody, and then they turn around and left, right? And your heart goes, well, if they're going to be like that, I quit. And it's very dangerous. Yeah, very dangerous, because this vow and vow number 9, the one about holding wrong views, neither of those two require those 4 nasty states of mind to fully break. They don't require the 4 chains that we're going to talk about next week. We can break vow 18 the instant we say, I quit. So don't ever say that. Don't ever even think it. Yes, you can have doubt. Yes, you can get discouraged. That won't break your vow. But no matter what, right? Uphold your, what do they call it? Pull your bootstraps up, right? Hang on tight. So they say vow number 9 and vow number 18 are the most serious 2 bodhisattva vows. Number 9 so serious because if we lose our understanding of the connection between our behavior and our experiences, future experiences, we won't care about keeping the vows. And if we lose our motivation to help all sentient beings, we don't have vows to keep anymore. So Geshe-la says, please start working with these behaviors, whether or not you even have them as vows, because the first time we hear them, we're most open and fresh and eager to explore them. And then when we hear them again, our mind naturally says, oh yeah, I know, right? And we miss the details. So start tracking them write them out, a little piece of paper, print them out if that's more convenient. However, there's something about seeing yourself handwrite something, right? To make your own little list. It's useful for the imprint. And then use a system that you're checking them every couple of hours through your day. Not, again, to beat yourself up about them, just to increase this awareness of our behavior making choices that we're learning to follow to avoid these certain unpleasantnesses that we might do towards others and train ourselves in their opposite, right? The pleasantnesses, the helpfulness is. So through the years, the keeping the book system has evolved, and it's helpful to use the system that's, provided, but feel free to make a system that works for you. The point is to have it already written down and then just stop every couple hours, look at it, and think about your previous couple of hours. And it could be as simple as writing a plus, minus, or just checking it off. You don't have to sit down and write anything. It's helpful, right, for our own mind if we do write specifics, but make your bookkeeping your own so that we'll do it. Yeah. Now, I confess I don't write my book every day anymore. I did it for many years. And the app on the phone, Keep My Vows app, that's really helpful to have it pop up and check. It's a little like right, they come up randomly, which is helpful. But the main reason for it is to establish this ability to be on the lookout for what we're thinking, saying, doing. With vows, it's saying and doing more than thinking. Thinking stuff comes later. But the thinking is what motivates the behavior. Yeah. Okay. Geshe Michael found Pabonka Rinpoche commenting that Jetsun Kappa's commentary on the Bodhisattva vows was the best description of those vows that he had ever found. And that's what's in your reading. So read your reading, right? Make notes upon how it helps you gain insight into these what behaviors to avoid, and so what behaviors to train in doing based on Jetsun Kappa's descriptions, and then expand them to fit modern life, right, as you need. Geshe said, if you recognize in any of these 18 vows some behaviors that we did before taking our vows, before we're ready to take our vows, he said, think carefully before taking the vows as to whether or not you feel you could really avoid that behavior once you have vows. And I don't know, in a really, I guess, the obvious situation would be if you have the habit of stealing stuff and it's a really hard thing not to do, and you're getting ready to take vows that says, I won't steal from a temple. You either have to say, I'm never going to go to a temple, or I'm really not going to steal when I get there. And if you don't think you can do either one of those, then don't take the vows, right? Don't set yourself up for failure when you can live according to the vows and still change your seed planting. It's just having the vows makes our seed planting all that more powerful. Do you see? So we've heard them. Now we are welcome to start changing our behavior accordingly. It's helpful to memorize those 18 so that we can rattle them off. Geshe-la even said, say, number 1, I will avoid. I never found that so helpful. But however, right, you can get them into a phraseology that will actually rattle around in your heart so that you're familiar enough with them that when a situation pops up, like, oh, there's my vow about that. Right? We want to be that familiar with them. Okay. Again, we are done early in this class, and we will stop early. And someday I will need those extra minutes. So remember that person that we wanted to be able to help. We did learn a lot that we will use to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you, challenge you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with wisdom, filled with the wisdom of loving kindness. And may it be so. So Linsong had a couple of questions. Are those any more clear?
Would you be explaining to us?
Yeah, I need to increase my volume here.
Sorry, I think it's my problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you be explaining to us about the other one about the setting motivation when we are not doing the Dharma activities?
Right, that's coming in the secondary vows.
Okay.
So
Okay.
one of Linsung's questions was, if we teach or study yoga, or we teach or study hypnotism, or we teach or study other stuff, are we breaking the vow that says we'll focus only on the Dharma. And by the literal words of the vows, it would seem like that we're not allowed to study or teach anything but Buddha Dharma. And as we understand what is and isn't Dharma, we understand that our motivation behind our sharing or learning is what establishes anything as a Dharma or not Dharma. So a bodhisattva could very well be a yoga teacher who's teaching yoga in order to help people gain the circumstances that will lead them eventually to the end of all their suffering. How they get there, right, isn't up to us necessarily. So it would be driven by our motivation. And then how much motivation does it take? Do we establish it for 30 seconds before class, or does it take 2 minutes? Or do we have to have it in mind the whole time? And again, there's no black and white answer to that. To the greater extent we have our bodhicitta in mind as we're doing our deed, is the greater extent within which the bodhicitta is planted in the new seeds, and the stronger it will be when those seeds ripen. So any amount is better than none. So when we set our motivation at the beginning of our day, right, when we set it again at the beginning of a new activity, the more the better, but at least once a day. Okay. Good. Thank you.
I have
Flavia
other questions, but I think
okay.
others put up their hands. I think I let them ask first.
Okay, but we'll come back. Flavia's hand went up.
Yeah, I have a funny question. When we study the Bodhisattva vows, it's many detail, how we break them, the 4 chains, and the mindset. But in the lay person vows that are included in the Bodhisattva vows, I don't remember at least hearing any extra, I don't know, explanation about how we break them.
About the 5 layperson vows, whether it takes the 4 chains to break them completely. That's a great question. I'd have to go back in my notes to see where that's listed. When we get lay vows as a separate set of vows that we give a sermon, we talk about them, and I'm pretty sure that teaching is in there. But when we get those lay vows as part of our bodhisattva vows, they're just all slurred together. And so it's not clear. So I'll make a note to check and see if I can get you the actual answer when we think about it. The 4 chains are reflections of the 4 parts of a path of action. Do you remember that teaching? What makes a karmic seed complete? And so that would be the influence on any of those 5 lifetime layperson's vows, the extent to which the 4 factors of a complete karma are intact would establish how strongly that seed was planted. And that's going to establish how ugly is the result. Yeah. So I'll make a note. Yes.
You started to talk about it just before Flavia's question about the motivation. I was wondering, how much does our motivation affects the action of our vow. Meaning, like, I don't want to kill someone, that's not my intention, but every day I walk around, I'm stepping on a bug, right? I don't want to speak of someone like in a negative way, but sometimes it can come across that way.
Right.
But that wasn't the intention. So just
Right.
wondering how much, yeah.
Right. So seed planting and vow breaking are like variations on a theme. Vow breaking, seed planting that breaks a vow is like the very worst of the behavior that we could do of that behavior. And that's what makes it a broken vow. It's what would make it a root downfall versus a secondary downfall. And when let me see if I can use an example like yours. I don't intend to kill anybody, but I walk on the grass and probably I squished a bug. And that is a seed, right, of accidental killing some small creature, even though I was trying not to. All those factors, the accidental, the killing that I was even trying not to, are all included in that seed. And so they're factors in the seed ripening, if it ever gets to ripening, because we haven't purified it well enough. Then the circumstances would be, inadvertently getting killed by somebody who didn't intend to do it. Right? Which would be a different circumstance than, being murdered by somebody. So all the details of all the aspects of a deed completed are included in that seed, which is why the karma and its consequences is such deeply hidden reality, because there are all those nuances of what our awareness is doing. Like included in that planting would be the time of day, the season of the year, the location you're in, right? All of that is in every seed planting. So the power of the intention is one of those 4 factors that are included in that complete path. Proper identification, right? The level of identification, the level of motivation, the level of the action taken, and the satisfaction with having completed it. So when you add the walking on the bug in the grass factor of satisfied with completing it, if we have that healthy sense of, I regret any bug I squished, as I walked on the grass, it changes the seed, right? It doesn't have the strength to actually ever make it over the threshold, if I understand it correctly. Because you're missing the, I did it, I'm glad I did it factor, right? So this healthy regret, not guilt, not shame, just darn, I just can't do it perfectly yet, is actually protective.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Linsa.
Yes, sorry, Lama. The 9th and the 18th, which is most difficult, because once we break it, right? So
Right.
I've been thinking about this wrong view. To what
Mhm.
extent is this wrong view? Because honestly, I mean, I'm holding wrong view all the time,
Me too. Me
right?
too.
So,
Right.
yeah,
So what we learned was 2 specific wrong views. You've already decided karma and its consequences is true because you took bodhisattva vows. And we've already decided there are such a thing as past and future lives, because here we are studying, right? And we took bodhisattva vows. So the fact that we have vows means we believe those 2 to enough of an extent that we declared ourselves on the path. We've already proven to ourselves the truth of those two. To break number 9, something has to happen where we revisit our logic about those two. And either one, if we revisit the logic and come to the conclusion, nah, karma and its consequences can't be true, well, then there's no need for past and future lives. And if we come to the conclusion past and future lives can't be, well, then karma and its consequences can't work either, because it takes more than one lifetime to get those results. So it would have to take a situation where our seeds shift such that we rethink our belief and come to the opposite conclusion, right? Then we end up rejecting the need for a moral behavior. No.
And then on the other question about, you mentioned that if you haven't taken the vow, Coach Michael was saying, if you know you cannot get rid of the habit, then
Yeah.
you don't take the vow first. But
Right.
in the case whereby you have already taken the vow, and
Yeah.
before you took the vow, you thought, yeah, maybe I could get rid of my anger, for example.
Mhm.
But as you go deeper and deeper, and you realize that, yeah, maybe previously you were not detailed in realizing, those a lot of emotions like coming out.
Right.
But as you go, as you as you travel the road, you realize, hey, you really have this anger inside you,
Mhm.
and I mean, giving back the vow would not be the right thing to do. Am I correct?
That's correct. Right. Right. You could, but you wouldn't want to, because you're going to give back all of them. And if you're working with that one, or more than one that have to do with anger, and you're keeping your other ones, reasonably well, the goodness of keeping the other ones is gonna help your effort in working with your anger to protect you from fully breaking the ones that have to do with anger. So again, the anger, the number 1 is you're teaching Dharma, somebody else is teaching Dharma. You're so angry with them that you're going to praise yourself and criticize them. No, I'm sorry, that's not the one. You're so angry with them that, start again. You're in a situation where you're so angry with somebody that you're going to stay angry even if they apologize. And that anger is going to go on affecting you in such a way that makes you want to hurt them, whether you ever actually hurt them or not, right? Your anger is festering and growing. So if through that anger that's persisting, you are repeatedly saying to yourself, man, I regret this anger, but I can't stop it, right? I really regret this anger, but I'm not gonna hit the person. Maybe I'll yell at them, but right? To be working with it, to be struggling against it, protects the vow. Those 4 chains. I don't think it's wrong to be angry at the person. The fact that somebody's even asking the question means I understand that it's wrong. So you already don't have one of the all 4. I can't stop it, but it's still there. I don't think it's wrong. I would do it again. I'm happy I did it. I'd do it again. And I forget, I'm losing my thought process here, but you're trying not to do it again, even though you are doing it again. So you don't have the 4th one happy about it. And you don't have the 1st one, which is, yeah, I'm right to be angry with them. So you don't have the 4 chains, so you're not breaking the vow. Are you damaging it? Yes. Right? Are you making more anger seeds by staying angry? Yes. Are you not replanting the old way of responding to the anger? I hope so. Because then that's burning off those anger feelings by not doing the deed that replants them. So say you do some other deed, right? That's still out of anger. It's different, right? The circumstance is different. The seed planting is different. So yes, we can have bodhisattva vows and still have anger and not break the vow. And then you'd want to say, okay, anger is what I want to work with here. And yeah, different ways to do that. Yeah, good.
Thank you.
So no,
Thank you.
don't give back your vow.
And I have one other question is that, we have a kind of like a Dharma group whereby people attend class and they put their name there. So we have people who registered their names and not turning up for like a year, right?
Yeah.
So then we were thinking we can do a spring clean.
Yeah.
But if we do we were thinking if we do a spring clean, then we are like cutting this person off from this Dharma learning, right? So we haven't done it because we were thinking what is the best way to not to affect the person's learning, but yet, like doing some spring cleaning.
Right. So you would check, those who are in charge would check their motivation, right? Is the motivation for the spring cleaning because they're signed up and they never show up? So why should we continue to provide them with the opportunity? If that's our motivation, don't spring clean. If the motivation is that, the system's getting clogged with all these names of people that don't show up, it's not benefiting them. It's harming others because now we don't have enough space for other people, or it's costing more. Well, then, yeah, spring clean. And maybe halfway in between would be to put out a message, anybody who's receiving this message, give us a thumbs up by February 15th, or we're gonna, spring clean your name off the list. You're welcome back anytime. Okay, and then see who responds. Yeah. Motivation is the key.
Thank you so much.
Good questions.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Berta, for the Spanish. I will see you Thursday. Okay, if not sooner, some of you. All right. Stop the recording. Yes.